One kid killing the parents is a bad seed. Two kids killing the parents is a bad family.
And would you read for us just the first few lines? The first 6 lines.
Hi, Mom. How are you? I hope you're all right and hanging in there. I often worry about you. You're the only mother I have and would want. Made any new friends? Done anything interesting? I hope so. I'm all right over here. Cole and I traveled.
And then it goes on and you talk about your trip. Is that correct?
Right. Thanks.
And would you read the last paragraph?
I hope everything's all right at home with Dad and Erik. I miss you all. I miss you all. I will write very soon again, so check the mailbox. Love you, Mom, Lyle.
When you wrote that letter to her, were those true feelings?
Yes.
Did you love your mom?
Yes.
Were you worried about her?
Yes.
Did you continue to try to reach out to her during this period of time?
I tried a few times and tried to let her know that we loved her, but she never acknowledged that.
You told us the other day about an incident in which she showed you the pills she was taking. Do you remember that?
Yes.
When did that conversation take place?
At my Aunt Terry's, and I'm not exactly sure when.
Do you know what year? Can you remember?
1989, I believe.
But sometime after they moved to California and you were still living back in New Jersey, is that correct?
Right.
And when she told you that she was taking these 13 pills a day, why did she say she was taking them?
She said she was taking them because she needed them to get through the day.
What did you think that meant?
That she was having trouble controlling herself and in a lot of pain, and that these pills were helping.
And did she tell you why she was in so much pain?
She said that it was my fault because I was stressing my dad out.
Did that make you feel good or bad?
It made me feel very bad and sorry and wanting to understand her. It was a very strange conversation.
And you knew about Louise at that time, didn't you?
Yes.
Did you ever say to her, Mom, you know you're upset about Louise, it's not my fault?
No.
Why not?
Because it was an unusual conversation. Just
Unusual in what way?
first time she ever acknowledged that she had a problem to me. And I had known, the severe problems for my whole life, and it's the first time she came to me and showed me, an example of how bad it was. And but she couldn't acknowledge what the problem was.
During this period of time from 1986 to 1989, did it seem like your parents knew a lot about your life?
And I think they knew almost everything about what was going on in my life.
And is this partly because of all the telephone conversations and seeing each other so much and you being asked all these questions?
Partly, yeah.
And is it partly because of something else?
Yes.
Did you later find out that they were doing something that would give them more information about you and your brother?
Yes, the phones were tapped, my brother's phones, and the house phones.
How did you find that out?
Afterwards.
How did you find it out? Did you hear something?
Yes, I saw the tape recorder plugged into the wall, and I also listened to some of the tapes of conversations between my brother and I, and my brother and his friends, anyone who had called the house.
You talked about the fact that during this period of time, your father seemed to have lost control over your mother. Is that correct?
Yes.
Had he become somebody who was weak and frightened and had no power?
No, my dad was never weak.
Would your dad talk about his business dealings during this period of time, 1986 to 1989?
Yes.
And what information did you have about what was happening with the company that he had taken over? Had he done a good job with it or a bad job?
Oh, he'd done a remarkable job. The company was a shambles. He came in and fired a great number of people and cleaned up the company's act, and very aggressively took it to be a profitable company. And he was making millions of dollars doing this, and they was making everybody money, and it was just getting bigger and bigger. And everybody thought he could do no wrong.
Was he kind-hearted in his business dealings?
Sustained.
Would he talk to you about the things he did in business?
Yes.
And did you have an opportunity to observe how he operated in business from the time you worked at the company?
Yes.
Was he kind-hearted in his business?
No, he was ruthless.
Objection, irrelevant with this story.
Objection sustained, the answer is stricken.
Would he talk to you about squeezing out smaller businessmen?
Yes.
Did he talk to you about doing business with people that other people were frightened of?
Objection, leaving.
Sustained.
Did he talk to you about the people he did business with?
Yes.
And what kind of people was he doing business with?
Well, he did business with some people that other executives were, according to him, too afraid to do business with, and his connections allowed him to do business with, like Morris Levy, who was a guy that owned a chain of video stores in Boston area, and my understanding was he was a gangster. So my dad flew out to meet him at the hotel because he was ordered by the court, because he was going to prison, to get rid of his assets, this guy, and nobody had enough courage to go out and meet with him and discuss a deal. My dad flew out personally.
Did your dad seem to be pretty brave in terms of the people that he did business with?
Objection, leaving.
Sustained.
How did your dad seem with regard to the people he did business with?
He seemed fearless. He talked about doing business with Barry Gordy, other, he had conversations about Noel Bloom, and he basically had confrontations with these people in which he felt that they were afraid of him, and he was not afraid of them.
And these are the stories he would tell you?
Yes.
Now, when your dad was talking about going into politics, was he also talking about you going into politics?
Yes.
And in the summer of 1987, did he make a decision about your personal appearance that was based on the idea that you were going to go into politics?
Yes.
Is this something that's hard for you to talk about?
Yes.
Can you tell me what the decision is your dad? Well, let me go back. Had you started losing some hair earlier in your life?
Yes.
How old were you when you started noticing that you were losing some hair?
I think 14.
And did some people tease you about it?
Yes.
And who is it that teased you about it?
Mostly tennis coaches. Occasionally someone at school would say something about it. I was losing very little hair, but still was disturbing to me.
And did you talk to your dad about this?
No, not back then.
You weren't bald at 14 or 15, were you?
No.
So you were just losing a small amount of hair?
Yes.
And in the summer of 1987, did you and your dad have a conversation about the state of your hair?
Yes.
And what was that conversation?
He felt that he wanted me to go into politics, and that I would be going to Princeton in the fall, and that's where I would meet a lot of my contacts. And he felt that I was going to, even though it wasn't very noticeable at that point, that I would probably continue to lose my hair, and that it would be a good idea to maybe right now, before I meet these people at Princeton, to get a hairpiece.
And did you do that?
I did.
How old were you?
I think I was 19.
And what did they have to do to give you a hairpiece?
I had lots of hair, so they shaved my head.
Your whole head?
Just the area where the hairpiece went on.
And what area is that?
Essentially just around the crown area and all the way back.
And did you get a hairpiece then?
Yes.
And are you wearing it today?
Yes.
How did you feel about getting a hairpiece at 19?
I was very worried. Mostly for superficial reasons like dating and stuff. I had a girlfriend at the time, and I was glad for that because I was concerned about dating and just jokes, people finding out. But my dad was pretty insistent that it was the right thing to do. So I did it.
Did you tell your brother?
No. But I think he knew I had something done.
Something done like what?
I don't know, some kind of, he couldn't tell I had a hairpiece, but he could, my hair was a little fuller, because I wasn't losing my hair in the front, it was kind of like in the back, and across the middle. I just obviously had fuller looking hair, and he commented on it a couple times, and I didn't tell him anything.
During this period of time, the 1986 to 1989 period, did your dad continue to have a lot of control over your life?
Yes.
And did he continue to have control in a very forceful way?
Yes.
And in the spring of 1987, did you have a coach named Robbie Klaus?
Yes.
And did Robbie Klaus have a conversation with you about something your dad had said to him.
Yes.
Where did this conversation take place?
In Florida, at a tennis tournament.
And what did Robbie Klaus tell you?
That my dad had threatened his life for suggesting that I become a tennis pro and maybe not postpone school. Robbie said he had never said that to him, but that my dad said he was hearing that.
When you say Robbie said he'd never said that to him, what do you mean? Robbie told you he'd never told your dad what?
He'd never made that suggestion to my dad.
Oh, that you drop out of school to go on the tour?
Right.
Okay.
But he just said that my dad had threatened his life with my mother sitting at the table. And he was petrified. And he basically wanted to let me know that because he was concerned for me. And he thought my dad was totally crazy. He was afraid.
Did you tell him, oh, you know, Dad just jokes a lot, don't worry about it?
No, I told him that my dad doesn't joke a lot about those things, and, you know, he should just relax and go home, and I'll be all right. And that was the last tournament we were going to do together because he could not coach me anymore. He was just couldn't coach me. He was too afraid.
Well, did you tell him that, you know, that he shouldn't be afraid?
No.
What'd you tell
If
him?
my dad felt that he was suggesting that, and I felt my dad could do something to him, I wasn't sure. So I found it. I didn't know what to think. I just felt that the guy was very shaken by it, and I felt very bad for him, because it was, you know, it's humiliating for him also. I just tried to say that that's just the way my dad is, and he should just sort of not coach me. It's fine. It's okay with me. It was a sad meeting, but it was also very tense, and I didn't really say much to him.
How did you feel?
I felt myself. I felt very shaken, shocked. Just I was also, my feelings were more. This is really the first time that I realized that I wasn't going to be doing tennis, even after school. That my dad was going into politics, and obviously when we discussed the hairpiece, then I knew for sure. But at that point, you know, I had the year off, and he had hired the coach, and we were spending a lot of money traveling around, and he just wanted Robbie to hang out with me till I went back to school. Is basically what was happening.
Did you have a tournament to play right after this conversation?
Yes. Yeah, then we had the satellite tournament.
What'd you do?
We had the conversation the night before, and I was just a wreck, and he was, you know, in the same condition, and I just couldn't play. I didn't want to play either. So I played through the first, I think I got through the first set, and then I just told the guy I can't play. And to report the scores, because I knew my dad would verify that I lost or not. So I made sure he reported the scores rather than default. And then when that was it, I just withdrew from the tournament.
Had you ever done that before?
No.
Had you ever seen anybody else ever do that before?
No.
Why didn't you just default? What would happen if your dad found out you defaulted?
Well, I didn't just default unless I had like an injury where I was incapacitated, couldn't play, and my dad saw that. So I had to play, I played injured, I played sick, so I couldn't just default. And he did eventually take my brother to a tournament in that area, I believe for Eric's Easter Bowl, and they passed by and they saw the score sheet, and he was able to tell me who had eventually won the tournament.
So he had checked up on you?
Yeah.
Well, what would happen if you just defaulted? What if you said, you know, Dad, I was really upset about your conversation with Robbie and I couldn't play. Why couldn't you do that?
I didn't do it because we had, you know, he had physically hurt me when I didn't do things his way, and I just felt that he was extremely tense during this whole period of time because of my mother. It just seemed much more volatile than usual, and I wasn't gonna really press any issue like that.
You were 19 years old at the time?
Yeah.
You told us that you were suspended from Princeton and then returned in February of 1989. Is that correct?
Yes.
And when you went back to Princeton, was there some arrangement made about the room you were to have?
Yes.
And what kind of room were you supposed to have?
We had requested a single room.
When you say we had requested, did you request it or did somebody else?
No, my dad requested a single room, and he had expected that they would grant that, and they usually did, supposedly.
When you got there, was the single room available?
No. I think they had tried to give me a single room, but it was like in a 7-man area where the 7 people lived, and somebody had just moved out that lived in a single room in that little area, so I guess that was supposed to be mine. But since I was coming in mid-year, the boys had rearranged their rooms and somebody was already in there.
What did you do when you found out the room you were supposed to have wasn't available?
I called my dad. And
Why'd you call your dad?
situations like that, I always call my dad immediately. It's better than him finding out another way.
How old were you?
I was 21.
So you called your dad and said the room I'm supposed to have is not available.
Right.
Did your dad give you some advice?
Yeah, he said, I explained him the situation, and he said that obviously was supposed to be my room, and the boy was off on a crew training trip with the crew team. So my dad told me to just move the guy's stuff out.
Did you want to do that?
I told him I think we should wait till the kid came back and maybe I could work it out or something, because if I just move the guy's stuff out, people aren't going to be, I'm not going to get along in that room. But my dad was pretty upset that they had put me in a 7-man room to begin with. He told me, just move the guy's stuff out and call me when you're done.
Why didn't you say, Dad, I don't want to do that. They're all going to hate me if I do that. I don't want to do it.
I told him that it wasn't a good idea, I didn't think, but I couldn't just I just never said no.
So did you move the stuff out?
I moved the stuff out, and the other kids had the reaction I thought they would have. They were very upset and wouldn't talk to me. And when the guy came back, he moved my stuff out and put his stuff back in, and moved my stuff into the hall. I don't want to have a problem with him, so I just stayed in the hall, and I actually slept in the hall, had a bed there, and I just lived in the hallway between the rooms, the 7-man rooms.
For how long?
I'm not exactly sure how long, almost 2 weeks. I think it was about 2 weeks.
And did something happen then?
My dad found out. I don't know how, but he found out. And
found out that you were in the hall?
Yes.
Okay.
And he was furious that I was in the hall, and basically didn't want to talk about it. Told me to go down, talk to the head of the college, and demand a new room.
Did you want to do that?
I wasn't happy in the hall, but I didn't. I had already checked into it, sort of, and asked if they had any available rooms, explained to them my situation at the housing place, and they said there was nothing they could do, that I was supposed to be in there, and I just have to get along. So I thought the best thing to do was just to stay in the hall until we came to an arrangement, because eventually I would get along better with everybody and we could figure something out. My dad didn't want me to go to the housing people. He told me to talk to the head of the college, and you tell him that you need a room. And so I went and I requested time with him, and I asked him. And they found me a room far away from where I originally was supposed to be in the college I was in. But it was a room that I guess somebody had moved out of or didn't show up or something like that.
Was that okay with you to be in that room?
Yes. And I moved all my things in there. And I called my dad and told him that it was great. I found a room. And he I thought that was fine. It was good. And then eventually, at some point, within a day or so, found out where the room was.
Your dad found out, you mean?
Yeah.
Okay.
And was really upset again that I had allowed myself to be moved out of the area where I was supposed to live, and said that I obviously couldn't handle the situation. He was going to call himself. That made me real nervous. I wasn't sure who he was going to call or what he was going to say, but like the next day, I was called in to talk to the head of the college.
And what kind of mood was the head of the college in?
He said that my dad was an asshole, and that nobody had ever talked to him like that before, and that he had a new room for me. And he was very hostile to me.
How did you feel?
I felt like semester was not starting out very well, and really wasn't surprising to me that the guy was in that mood. That's why I was nervous to begin with when he called. I just tried to tell the guy that, you know, I didn't have anything to do with it. My dad, I liked the other room, and he said that I was just a chip off the old block, and I was spoiled, and I just wanted a new room. So I had my old man call and curse him out.
Had you had your father call him?
No.
Did you want your father to call him?
No.
Did you want to stay in that other room that you had been given?
I wanted to stay in the other room just so I could get on with the semester, and it was a good room. And so Dad was able to get me a double-sized room right next to where I was supposed to be.
So you were back around all of the people that you'd been around with in the beginning when you'd had the trouble by moving the guy's stuff out?
Yes.
Were they friendly to you?
They were not friendly to me.
Were you happy your dad had interfered in that way?
No, I was just complaining to my Aunt Terry that my whole situation at school was so bad that I just would prefer to live with her. And